What's up, you guys? It's Sir Scrub here, bringing you some more Scrub Tier Yu-Gi-Oh! And in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at my boy Brock's Domain Monarch deck profile, featuring all the spice right here. We got our gods up in the building. Brock, why don't you go on and tell us about all the spice in this here Monarch deck?
All right, so it's kind of an interesting little deck idea I had. Just throw in triple obelisk into a deck and see if it would work. And surprisingly, it did.
It did a lot. I can personally attest to this deck's power.
Super consistent. Surprisingly, I mean it is Monarchs after all, but obelisk might be a little overkill, but just for the lulz. Moving on from obelisk, we've got 2 copies of Ether.
Freshly back at 2.
Back at 2, might as well play it. Got 1 copy of Erebus here. And then we have 1 copy of Majesty's Fiend and 1 copy of Vanity's Fiend. These are more of your backup cards if you can't get into the Obelisk or the Erebus or Ether. These are just good cards to have. It can lock out your opponent of several things. And just a good backup overall. Moving on, we've got our tribute fodder. We got 3 copies of Adea, 3 copies of Eidos, and 3 copies of Mithra.
Now this is a particularly interesting one. So Mithra is the one that gives your opponent a token, right? How did you find ways to capitalize off of that?
So the whole idea behind it was kind of a battle between Mithra or the Fire Vassal, and it was kind of a tough decision, and in the end I decided to pick the one that gave my opponent a token over pitching a card, and that especially now that Stormforce is not at 1 anymore. You can capitalize off that. If you have a Stormforth in hand, you contribute your opponent's token to further your play even more. And it just gives that card a little bit of usage even on turn 1. So that's kind of the
whole
thought process that led me to pick that one over Burn It With.
And you have to play the extra vassal so that way you can get the amount of tributes for Obelisk, right? Because she special summons.
The way it works more or less is you can summon Mithra, you can summon Adea. Adea searches Eidos. Eidos' effect, you can tribute all 3 of them for Obelisk. If you have Stormforth, even if they do, Ash Adea, you can Stormforth a token on their side of the field, and you still got 3 tributes. So it's just it makes it a little bit more consistent and gives you the tributes you need, even for your biggest monster. Moving on to the spells, we've got 3 copies of Domain.
Heart and soul of the deck right here.
There's no extra deck here, so you want to capitalize off that, and plus you're playing tribute summons monsters, so it's a good call. I got 3 copies of Tenacity, the end-all be-all searcher for Monarch stuff.
Consistency.
Again, it gets you, if you need Domain, it gets you to it. I mean, if you need any other Monarch spells or traps, it gets you there. It makes the deck a lot more consistent overall.
3 extra copies of whatever you need.
Pretty much. After that, we've got 2 copies of March. Basically, just protect your stuff. You don't want to get them destroyed. Then we got 2 copies of Stormforth. I didn't really feel like it was necessary to play at 3 simply because I've got 3 copies of Tenacity, and as much draw power as I have in this deck, it's just not necessary to have that much.
This is the ultimate board breaker.
Yeah, and again, that's kind of how you capitalize off of that token that you might be giving your opponent, is simply by Stormforthing it and using it yourself. Moving on from that, you've got 1 copy of Pantheism.
Oh, rip.
Too bad this one hasn't come back to more, huh?
I swear.
But, it's Pantheism. You draw 2.
Straight pot of greed.
Draw 2, banish it, get another card. It's just a huge consistency boost to the deck. Moving on from there, onto the non-archetypal spells, we've got 3 Carded Demise. This is the most expensive card that you can get at the lowest price. I mean, if you go for the cheapest cards that you can get, this is the most expensive card, but it is the card that gives you the draw power that you really need in this deck.
Really, really big speed boost.
Yeah, it definitely furthers your plays. It gets you to the cards you want to see, and just overall makes the deck work as a whole.
And there's ways to recover for pitching your cards too, right?
Yeah, I mean, moving on to the traps here in a minute, there's different ways you can get your cards back. Of course, you can, if any of them are banished, a day going to the grave can bring those back.
Plenty of ways to play around it.
Yeah, there's not that big of an issue. Moving on from there, we got one copy of Monster Reborn.
Look at that lost art. That is beautiful. I'm so glad they imported that.
It is beaut. It's Monster Reborn. Not much to be said there. Just an extra body on board, extra tribute fodder for your bigger monsters.
Damage.
Just overall, it's a good card that furthers your plays. Going on from there, we've got one copy of 1-for-1. It's essentially your fourth copy of a Dea. Pitch a monster, get a Dea on board, and go from there. I mean,
it's just history from there.
Yep. Then you've got one copy of Rhoda, which is your fifth Adea.
Because the consistency.
That's what this deck needed.
Yep.
5 copies of Adea, essentially, is really what makes this deck work.
Because without your tribute fodder, everything dies.
Yeah, unless you get the small monsters out there, you're never going to get to Obelisk the Tormentor.
Yeah.
Going on from there, we've got one copy of Upstart Goblin. 39 card. Well, yeah, 39 card deck. I mean,
pure and simple, just deck thinning.
Yeah, it's just deck thinning, gets you through. Hopefully, gets you to see the cards you really want to see.
And plus, you're playing Obelisk. That 1,000 life points don't matter.
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all.
We got world beaters over here.
Moving on from spells to the traps, we've got 2 copies of the Monarch Erupt. Basically, just skill drain.
Skill drain for everyone but you and True Draco.
Pretty much. Unless I'm playing against another tribute deck, that's kind of going to be a staple.
So why 2 and not 3?
Just again, back to the consistency with the 3 tenacities, all the draw power that you have. There's really no reason to play more than 2, just for consistency's sake and keeping the deck at 40 cards.
I got you.
Moving on from there, we've got 2 copies of the first Monarch. Essentially, it's just back row that you can summon as a monster. You can pitch a card to make it 2 tributes, so you can get your bigger monarchs out even if you don't have domain, or you can use it for Obelisk and get him out with only essentially 2 tributes.
Because Divine is an attribute, so
that it is. And so it's an overall consistency booster. It's another tribute fodder that you can use.
And worst comes to worst, you can use it to block an attack in the worst situation.
This is true. And then finally, the last card in the deck, we've got 1 copy of the Prime Monarch. Essentially, it's just your graveyard recoverable. It, furthers your plays if you get it on board. If you do have to pitch it to the grave, again, it's you can bring it back as a monster and have it as tribute fodder, or just in emergency, you can use it as a wall.
Really helps extend the life of your grind game.
Yep, that it does. And that's it. That's the deck.
No extra deck. Really, really cheap budget deck. If you guys want a really powerful deck, I really do highly suggest this. The Domain Lock is still a powerful, powerful lock, especially going up against something like Crusadia Thunder or whatever. And we all know from True Draco how powerful the Monarch's Erupt is. I want to give a special huge thanks to my boy Brock here for blessing us with this divine profile today. If you guys did enjoy this video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. If you want to see more creative deck profiles from me, please be sure to check out my PayPal and Patreon links in the description. Check out my other social media too. I'd love to get a discussion going with you. But, most importantly, don't forget, be a scrub.